Peace be upon you, and welcome to a new episode. On August 27th, 2020, at 3 a.m., police officers were digging along a remote desert road in Betrayal Governorate, Egypt, a place far from any prying eyes. After hours of exhausting digging, they found the body of a young man buried under the sand, covered in stab wounds to his chest and abdomen, with traces of blood still clinging to him. It was the body of Ahmed, the young man who was supposed to get married in just 2 days. But who did this, and why? The body had been buried under a bridge in a place no one usually passes through, as if the killers were sure no one would ever find it. But this wasn't just a murder. It was the beginning of a story that shook all of Egypt, the story of the Bride of Betrayal, a story of love, betrayal, jealousy, and blood. And today, we're going to tell it in full detail, starting from August 15th, 2020, all the way until the full truth came to light. Get ready, because this story will take you on a long journey filled with shocks and unbelievable twists. But before we dive into the story, don't forget to like and share the episode so it can reach as many people as possible. And if you're a fan of Indian stories, make sure to subscribe to the other channel to stay updated with everything new. You'll find the link in the description box. And without further delay, let's dive deep into our story. On August 15, 2020, Ahmed, a young man in his mid-20s, was preparing for his wedding in Dillingat Center, Betrayal Governorate. He was handsome, kind-hearted, and came from a well-off family. His father had prepared everything for him years ago so he could live a decent life, a fully furnished house, a stable job at a hotel in Cairo, and a secure future. When the time came to get married, his family chose Rehab, a girl from the same area, known for her beauty and strong personality. Her family was respectable, but their demands for the marriage were extremely high and expensive. They wanted a luxurious wedding hall in the city, an expensive dress from Cairo, a professional photographer, a top-tier hairdresser, and high-end arrangements. They also demanded a large dowry and an expensive gold set. But Ahmed and his family didn't focus on those demands. They agreed to everything and even offered more, just to show they were serious. They set the wedding date for August 25th, 2020, a day that was supposed to mark the beginning of a new life for Ahmed and Rehab. Ahmed was living in a dream. Every morning he'd wake up and go to work in Cairo, finish his shift at the hotel, then spend the evening coordinating wedding details with Rehab. He used to speak about her with great affection to his friends and co-workers, saying he couldn't wait for the big day. He dreamed of seeing her as his bride and often imagined their life together after the wedding. His friends said he always talked about Rehab and how happy he was to have found a girl like her. His family confirmed that he was very excited and had no doubts whatsoever. The money was ready at home, the hall was booked, the invitations had been sent to all friends and relatives, and even his wedding suit and clothes were already hanging in his closet. Rehab also appeared to be happy. She would go with her mother and sisters to pick out her wedding dress, arrange the decorations, and make sure everything in the hall was just the way she wanted. She spoke to people about the wedding and said she was excited for what was coming. Everything looked like it was going to be a perfect wedding. But suddenly, on August 22nd, 2020, Ahmed disappeared, as if the earth had swallowed him. At first, his family thought he may have gone out to run some last-minute errands for the wedding. They figured maybe he was overwhelmed with the preparations and just needed some time alone. They tried to reassure themselves, but when they called him, his phone was off. They tried everything, calling his friends, co-workers, and even going to the hotel in Cairo to ask about him. but no one knew anything. Rehab kept calling him repeatedly and told her family she didn't know where he was and that she was worried. Ahmed's family started searching everywhere, asking his friends, neighbors, and people he worked with, but it was no use. Hours turned into days, and worry turned into sheer terror. On August 23, 2020, Ahmed's family decided they couldn't wait any longer. They went to the police station in Dillingat and filed an official missing person report. They told the officer that Ahmed had been very happy about the wedding and there was no reason for him to run away or vanish. Everything was ready: the money, the wedding suit, his car was in the garage, and even his passport was still at home. They said they had spoken with him on August 21st, and he was laughing and talking about the wedding. At first, the police treated the report as a typical missing persons case. They thought maybe the young man had changed his mind about the marriage, or just needed a break from the pressure of the preparations. But as the days passed, and not a single lead surfaced about Ahmed's whereabouts, suspicions began to rise. The police formed an investigation team and began searching hospitals and accident centers. But there was no sign of him. Ahmed had vanished, as if he had evaporated into thin air. At Rehab's house, the atmosphere was heavy. The girl who was supposed to become a bride in 2 days was now sitting in her room while people came to offer her condolences as if her fiancé had died. She cried in front of her family, saying she was scared for him and had no idea what had happened. She called his phone in front of others and broke down when it went straight to voicemail. People started to talk. Some said that Ahmed might have run away because he didn't want to get married. Others suspected something bad had happened to him. Some even began to suspect Rehab, but there was no evidence to prove anything. Everyone was confused, and no one knew the truth. On August 27, 2020, 5 days after Ahmed's disappearance, the shocking truth came out. A young man named Mahmoud, Rehab's cousin, walked into the police station in Damanhur. He looked extremely anxious, his face was pale, and his hands were shaking as if he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He told the officer he hadn't been able to sleep for days and was haunted by nightmares. In his dreams, he saw Ahmed coming to him and asking, "Why did you kill me? Why did you do this?" The officer was stunned and asked, "What exactly are you saying?" Mahmoud broke down in front of the officer and began to confess. He said, "I'm the one who killed Ahmed." This statement hit like a thunderbolt. The police had no leads to find Ahmed, and suddenly they were faced with a full confession of murder. Mahmoud said he wasn't alone in the crime. Rehab was the one who planned everything, and there was a third person involved, Mohammed, Mahmoud's friend, who also worked as a driver. The officer asked Mahmoud to show them where the body was. Mahmoud took them to a remote desert road near Sheikh Zayed, a place so isolated that no one could possibly stumble upon it. They began digging, and after hours of hard work they found Ahmed's body. It was covered in stab wounds to the chest and abdomen, and it was clear he had tried to resist, but couldn't. The body was buried under a bridge in a spot no one ever passed by. The police transferred the body to the morgue and launched an urgent investigation. Back at the police station, Mahmoud began telling the story from the beginning. He said that ever since he was a child, he had loved Rehab. They were cousins, and everyone knew there was something between them. Ever since they were kids, they dreamed of getting married and living together. They used to spend a lot of time together, talking about the future and making plans. But around 2018, when they got older, Rehab's father rejected the idea. He said Mahmoud, who worked as a driver and didn't have strong financial standing, was not suitable for his daughter. He wanted Rehab to marry someone like Ahmed, a man with a house, a good job, and money. Mahmoud tried to convince Rehab's family, but their rejection was firm. Eventually, Rehab was forced to agree to the engagement with Ahmed, who proposed in February 2020. But her heart was still with Mahmoud. During the entire engagement period, from February to August 2020, Rehab kept secretly communicating with Mahmoud. She called him at night, sent him messages, and told him she didn't love Ahmed and didn't want to marry him. She complained about the pressure from her family and said she felt like she was living a life that wasn't hers. Mahmoud became increasingly jealous. He imagined Rehab with Ahmed, and it tore him up inside. He dreamed of the day they would be together again, but he knew that would be impossible as long as her family rejected him. Rehab kept giving him hope, telling him she would try to find a solution, but that he had to be patient. On August 15, 2020, as the wedding day approached, Rehab started to feel even more pressure. She knew she couldn't go through with marrying Ahmed, but at the same time she was afraid of how her family would react if she refused the marriage. On August 18, 2020, Mahmoud suggested that they run away together. He told her, "Let's leave everything behind and start fresh in a new place." But Rehab immediately rejected the idea. She said, "What will people say about me? There's no way I'm going to run away and destroy my reputation." Still, she was determined not to marry Ahmed. Then, on August 20, 2020, Rehab said something to Mahmoud that changed everything. She told him, "If you really want me, then you have to get Ahmed out of the way." At first, Mahmoud hesitated. Murder? That was a serious matter, and he had never imagined doing something like that. He kept telling himself, "How could I kill someone? That's a huge sin." But Rehab kept pressuring him. She told him it was the only solution and that if he truly loved her, he needed to prove it. Jealousy, old love, and the feeling of injustice from when Rehab's family rejected him, all of that drove him to agree. He told himself, "If this is the only way to be with her, then I have to do it." Rehab and Mahmoud started planning the crime in detail. Rehab knew that Ahmed would be going to Cairo on August 22, 2020, to pick up her wedding dress. She told Mahmoud to take advantage of that opportunity since Ahmed would be traveling alone. Mahmoud coordinated with his friend Mohammed, who was also a driver and was willing to help. Mohammed knew that Mahmoud was in love with Rehab, and he agreed to help without giving much thought to the consequences. They planned to lure Ahmed to a remote desert road, drug him with something strong, then kill him and bury him in a place where no one could ever find him. Everything was calculated, like a scene out of a movie. On August 21, 2020, Mahmoud and Mohammed prepared everything: the sedative, the knife, the rope, and the axe they would use to dig. Rehab kept checking with Mahmoud to make sure everything was ready, reminding him not to make any mistakes. She called him every day, confirming he hadn't backed out and telling him that this was the only way they could be together. On August 22, 2020, at 4 a.m., Ahmed left his house full of happiness. He was heading to Cairo to pick up Rehab's wedding dress, excited about the day he'd finally see her as his bride. He met Mahmoud at the transportation stop in Dilingat. Mahmoud knew Ahmed well. He was Rehab's cousin, so Ahmed had no reason to suspect anything. Mahmoud acted normally, laughing and chatting with him like any relative would. He told him, "I'm going to Cairo with Mohammed. Come with us. We'll give you a ride." Ahmed agreed without hesitation and got in the car with them, thinking he was just taking care of a wedding errand, without knowing that death was waiting for him. On the road, Mohammed offered Ahmed a juice laced with a strong sedative. Within minutes, Ahmed started feeling extremely dizzy, and soon after, he lost consciousness completely. Mahmoud and Mohammed stopped the car on a desert road near the Daba area, far from any village or main road. Ahmed was still alive, but very weak due to the drug. They tried to tie his hands with a rope, but he resisted a little. He tried to speak, to scream, but his body couldn't move. Mahmoud pulled a knife from his pocket and stabbed Ahmed multiple times in the chest and stomach. Ahmed collapsed to the ground, and his blood began to soak into the sand. But the crime wasn't over yet. Mahmoud and Mohammed dug a deep hole in the ground using an axe and threw Ahmed's body into it. They buried him thoroughly and covered the area with sand so no one would find a trace. After they finished, they returned to the village as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Rehab was at home, continuing her wedding preparations like any bride. She was calling Ahmed in front of her family and friends and crying as if she were worried about him. She would say, "I don't know where he is. I'm scared for him." But deep inside, she knew he was already dead. She played the role of the heartbroken bride, even though she was the one who had planned everything. She went with her family to the wedding hall, arranged the decorations, and made sure everything appeared normal. Even when people started asking about Ahmed, she would say she had no idea what happened to him and that she was waiting for news. She cried in front of others and said she had dreamed of the wedding day, but now she was just worried about her fiancé. It was all an act to keep anyone from suspecting her. Mahmoud tried to return to his normal life. He went to work, hung out with his friends, but the nightmares wouldn't leave him. Every night he saw Ahmed in his dreams, coming to him and asking, "Why did you kill me? Why did you do it?" Fear was eating him alive. Every time he tried to sleep, he'd wake up terrified. He felt like guilt was killing him, and he couldn't live with the secret. He tried to distract himself, going to work, talking to people, but inside, he was at war. Every time he saw someone from Ahmed's family, he felt like their eyes were accusing him. He felt like the world was closing in on him, and he had to confess to feel any relief. 5 days after the crime, on August 27, 2020, Mahmoud couldn't take it anymore. He went to the police station in Dillingat and broke down in front of the officer. He said, "I killed Ahmed, and I can't live with what I've done." The police arrested Mohammed that same day, August 27, 2020. Mohammed tried to deny it at first. He said he had nothing to do with the incident. He claimed he just helped Mahmoud with a small matter and didn't know it would lead to murder. But when police confronted him with Mahmoud's confession, he had no choice but to tell the truth. He admitted he helped Mahmoud tie up Ahmed and dig the grave, but insisted he wasn't the one who stabbed him. He tried to downplay his role, but the police didn't believe him. Rehab was also arrested the same day. At first, she tried to deny everything, claiming she had no connection to the crime. She said she was worried about Ahmed like any bride would be and that she had no idea he was dead. She claimed she had been dreaming of the wedding and that Ahmed's disappearance had broken her heart. But when police confronted her with Mahmoud and Mohammed's confessions, she couldn't deny it any longer. The investigation revealed that Rehab was the mastermind behind everything. She was the one who told Mahmoud to kill Ahmed, the one who chose the day and the location, and the one who gave him step-by-step instructions on what to do. The investigation began immediately. The prosecution interrogated all three: Rehab, Mahmoud, and Mohammed. Mahmoud was emotionally devastated and repeated his confession several times. He said that Rehab was the one who came up with the idea of the murder and that she had pressured him to carry it out. He said he loved her deeply and did it just to be with her. Mohammed admitted to his role in helping with the crime, but tried to downplay his responsibility. He said he was only helping Mahmoud out of friendship and that he never intended to kill anyone. Rehab, on the other hand, tried to play the role of the victim. She claimed she was afraid of Mahmoud and that he had threatened her to agree to the plan. She told investigators that she had only kept in contact with Mahmoud because he was harassing her and she never wanted anyone to get hurt. But the evidence was stacked against her. Police found messages and call logs between her and Mahmoud, proving that she had been planning the crime with him days before it happened. She had sent him texts telling him he had to carry out the plan and that she wouldn't be with him if he backed out. On September 7, 2020, the prosecution decided to renew the detention of Rehab, Mahmoud, and Mohammed for 15 more days pending further investigation. The police had collected all the evidence: the knife used in the stabbing, the rope, the axe, and even the juice that had been drugged. They also examined Ahmed's body at the morgue and discovered that he had tried to fight back with all his strength. There were defense wounds on his hands, showing he had tried to stop the knife, but the drug was too strong, and the stab wounds were fatal. He didn't stand a chance. The investigation continued for months, and the prosecution ensured every claim was backed by solid evidence. They examined every detail: phone calls, messages, witness statements from people who knew Rehab and Mahmoud, and they even questioned Ahmed's family for anything that seemed suspicious. Prosecutors discovered that Rehab had been living a deep internal conflict. On one hand, she was pressured to please her family and marry Ahmed, who was the ideal choice in their eyes. He had a house, a stable job, money, and came from a respectable family. On the other hand, her heart was with Mahmoud, whom she had loved since childhood. But instead of confronting her family or finding another solution, she chose the worst one: murder. She knew that if she told her parents she didn't want to marry Ahmed, it would cause a scandal, and it would be hard for them to find her another suitor. So she thought the best solution was to remove Ahmed from the picture entirely. Investigators were shocked that a 17-year-old girl could think of such a plan and carry it out so coldly. As for Mahmoud, he was an ordinary young man who worked as a driver and lived a simple life. He had no criminal record, and no one ever imagined he could do something like this. But his love for Rehab pushed him to commit an act even he didn't think he was capable of. He said in his confession that he felt Rehab was the only one who understood him and gave him hope that they would be together. He said he was afraid of losing her, and when she told him that murder was the only solution, he felt he had to prove his love to her. When the investigators asked him, "Weren't you afraid of what would happen?" he replied, "I felt like I was doing it for her, and that she would be mine afterward." Mohammed, who was just a friend of Mahmoud, got involved because he agreed to help without thinking much. In the investigation, he said he didn't intend to kill anyone, but Mahmoud told him it was something simple and convinced him to help out for the sake of their friendship. But when he saw the blood, he realized he was part of something far bigger than he could handle. He tried to justify himself, saying he was afraid to say no to Mahmoud because he didn't want to lose him as a friend. But the investigators didn't buy it. They told him that helping in the crime made him an accomplice to murder. The case was referred to the Damanhur Criminal Court, and the entire country was waiting for the verdict. The trial began in late 2020 and continued into 2021. The prosecution charged all three with premeditated and deliberate murder. The lawyers tried to defend them in every possible way. Rehab's lawyer said she was a minor and wasn't fully responsible for her decisions. He tried to convince the court that she was under pressure from Mahmoud and that she never wanted the murder to happen. Mahmoud's lawyer said he was under emotional pressure from Rehab, who incited him. He described Mahmoud as a good young man who was driven by love to do what he did. Mohammed's lawyer argued that he had no intention to kill, and he only helped Mahmoud with something he thought was minor. But the evidence was overwhelming. The messages, the phone calls, the tools used in the crime, and the confessions from all three clearly proved they had planned the murder together. In 2021, the final verdict was issued. Mahmoud and Mohammed were sentenced to death by hanging for their direct role in the murder. Mahmoud was the one who stabbed Ahmed, and Mohammed helped tie the victim and dig the grave. Rehab, who was 17 at the time of the crime, was sentenced to 7 years in prison because the law considered her a minor. This ruling upset many people, as Rehab was the mastermind behind the crime. She was the one who planned it, who incited Mahmoud, and who followed up every step of the plan. But the law saw things differently, ruling that she was still young and not fully accountable for her actions. This case, everyone, is not just a story of murder. It's a story about love turning into hatred, about jealousy blinding reason. Rehab, who was supposed to be a bride, decided to destroy Ahmed's life to keep her old love. Mahmoud, who loved her since they were young, sacrificed everything for her, but in the end, lost it all. Muhammad, who was just a friend, got dragged into a crime that destroyed his life. And Ahmed, the young man who dreamed of his wedding and a new beginning, ended up buried in the desert without ever knowing why. This story reminds us that the decisions we make in moments of anger or jealousy can become our downfall. It reminds us that when love turns into obsession, it destroys everything in its path. Tell us in the comments, what do you think made Rehab and Mahmoud do what they did? Was it love, jealousy, or fear of people's judgment? Write your opinion below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. If this is your first time on the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.